Hey everybody, welcome back to another DesignSpark Electrical overview and tutorial video. This video is going to cover our title blocks, adding our title blocks, replacing our title blocks, and manipulating our title blocks to include information that we want. Now, one thing to note before we start is title blocks versus templates. Those are two completely separate things in DesignSpark Electrical and SOLIDWORKS Electrical. When you're referring to a template, that is the overall entire project. That includes all the configuration information and any project information, essentially a starting point for a new project. A title block is what you see here, is the background for our schematic or line diagram sheets. With that said, let's go ahead and take a look at our title block. We have a very generic title block here. This is one of the defaults that come with DesignSpark Electrical, and we're going to take this and we're going to edit this to include additional information. So in order to replace a title block, you have a few options. The first option is inside of your project configuration under title blocks, you have the ability to change the type of title block that you want to use. In this case here, for our schematic, we are using this template. If I desire, I can simply select and go to this selector and choose an existing title block. I also have the ability to change the title block by right-clicking on the document in my Documents panel and go to Replace, or I can actually select the tab of the specific sheet that I want to change, and I'm going to go ahead and replace it. Now, I've already gone ahead and created a copy. If you remember when we created a symbol, you have the ability to create a brand new symbol. You can import a DWG and manipulate that symbol to turn it into a DesignSpark Electrical symbol, and you also have the ability to copy and paste. That is exactly what I did here. Is I copied and pasted an existing title block and I've turned it into this new title block here. You can see here the one major difference is that I now have row numbers inside of this title block. Now, in order to edit this title block, we would come back to our right-click title block and we can open that specific title block, and we now see that we have a DWG open. Now we have a lot of attributes. Again, just like a symbol, there are a lot of attributes that we can choose from to add to our project. And once you're inside of this DWG, you can change the title bar at the bottom and you can manipulate it to maybe include that smaller box down in the bottom right corner. And you can maneuver and manipulate and change the size of all of the different attributes here. You have in order to find out what these attributes are, you can use the Show Attributes icon at the top under the Edit Title block, and you can see what the description is for every single one of these. And if you want to add additional attributes on the left-hand side, you will see the attribute list. Anything that is in blue has already been added to this particular sheet, and you can always go ahead and select them and pull them into your existing project. Now, the one thing that I've noticed that can trip a lot of people up is adding your row numbers or your some sort of scheme for row numbering or columns. Now, you want to, in this case here, I've already set up my rows. So all I'm going to do is use the same row attribute and I'm going to copy that, but I'm going to multi-copy that, and I'm going to use a specific point to match and make sure that the spacing is between every single one of these exactly the same. So that way, when I come to my right-hand side of the screen and I'm working with my configuration for the rows, it makes sense and it gives me a valid output on my schematic sheet. Now, it may take a little tweaking to get this to work just right, because depending on how many rows you want, depending on, some people, like in my case here, I have 24, but some people want just 1, 2, 3, 4. Some people want 1 through 8, whatever it is. Maybe a vertical sheet has 30 numbers on it or something like that. So again, this case I have 24. So I'm going to start with the first number is going to be 1. I can make it 0. I can make it 200, whatever I want. The first position is going to call out this position right here. So there's an invisible dimension that you can't see on here that is calling out this 10 inches on this sheet. The row height is probably the most important one and the one that ends up having to be tweaked the most. What I mean by that, I'll show you in just a second, is we have to determine exactly how much space is between every single one of these rows. And finally, the last one is how many rows do we have? So if I come back to my sheet, I can see that I have rows 1 through 24. Now, this height of row, if I change this to negative 3.9, and I have to remember to save any changes I made to that DWG. I'm going to go ahead and update this title block. We notice if we start counting, we get 13 and we get 13. And our bottom number is 23, so we can easily identify that there's something wrong. So again, that row height really makes a difference. You have to go in and tweak that just a hair depending on how you want to set that numbering scheme up. I think it took me about 6 times of just manipulating this number to really fine tune. I think I went from 0.39 down to 0.38 down to 0.375, and I finally got the appropriate number. Sometimes you might actually even have to go down to 3.4, 7.3. But again, that all depends on your scheme that you're working with. Same thing applies to columns. I don't have columns in here, but you would do the exact same thing where you would start and you would provide that number. Now, the reason why it's a negative number is because you're starting up here and you're working your way down in this list. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save that. And now I have my numbering scheme. I'll update it, make sure that there's no additional changes. And you can see here that I am now back to 1 through 24. Now, 1 through 24, that's great, but we can probably make this a little bit more robust, right? I'm working on sheet 3. I'm also maybe want to change the numbering scheme from just a single digit, or maybe I want it to say a 3-digit number instead. So that is where we would come back into our project configuration, and we can manipulate the mark for the row. And in this case here, it's just the row order number 1 through 24. But I can come in and let's go ahead and I will change it to a 3-digit number. And just like that, I now have 001, so on all the way down to give me a 3-digit number. Maybe even that isn't good enough. Maybe I want to add the actual file information. So this is where I would come in and I could add the file mark to this. So I have file tag plus the row number. And if I desire, I could come in and add a simple space between these. Now remember, your formulas, as we talked about in a few of the videos now, is that the formulas between these, if you have any errors, any characters out of space, you're going to receive an error and you're not going to be able to say OK, which is a nice little check so that you can't have, it won't let you have errors. So in this case here, I'm going to show the document, which is 003 with a space and 3 digits. So I can apply that. We can see that happen right here. Sheet 3, row 1. The nice thing with this is by setting it up in a manner like this, now that my title block is set up with this kind of information, I can also drive the mark automatically based off of the row and sheet, or the sheet and row, for my connectors and my wires. So I don't have to worry about assigning default codes such as X1 or J1 or P1 or W1 to my wires. It will take on the naming convention based on the row it is in. And it just helps us to identify and define the information in our schematics that much easier, especially when we get to things like our wire reports or any type of bill materials later on. So I hope this helped. It was a very quick way to understand our title blocks. This was a B-size sheet. You can do this with any type of sheet that you want. Again, a portrait sheet, a landscape sheet, or maybe something like a vertical piping sheet. You can manipulate this as necessary. So I always find that to be the struggle point for a lot of people using this, is setting any type of information up such as this. So I wanted to cover that in this video. We will be covering a lot more topics in the next few videos, locations and functions, a little bit more on cabling, so on and so forth. We'll get to reports and importing and exporting a little later on in this video series. So again, thanks for watching. See you next time.